My daughter came home in tears one evening after visiting her grandparents for a Christmas gathering. Without a word, she handed me a wrapped gift, her face etched with hurt. "Mom, look at this. Why do I have to go through this?" she cried. Speechless, I opened the package to find something shockingly inappropriate for a child. Alarmed, I reported the incident to the police. What followed was a series of revelations that shook our family, leading to the exposure and consequences for the person behind the act. This event added another layer to an already complicated family dynamic. At 45, with a younger husband who works in the same company as me, I built a career defined by merit rather than age or gender. My husband, once my supervisor, stood by me after a disparaging comment from a former employer led me to change careers at 34. His unwavering support became a cornerstone of our relationship, culminating in our marriage and the arrival of our daughter, now a thoughtful fourth grader who loves books and embodies kindness. However, my relationship with my husband's sister has always been fraught. While I get along well with my in-laws, she has never approved of me being older than her brother. Her constant mocking of our swift marriage and my physical changes from pregnancy often stung, but I chose to rise above it for my peace of mind. Ironically, her attitude softened only after her own whirlwind wedding and subsequent move to another city. With her out of the picture, I focused on preparing for motherhood despite the challenges of pregnancy and childbirth. The birth of our daughter marked a turning point, filling our lives with joy and momentarily silencing the negativity that had shadowed us. My husband's steadfast encouragement during our daughter's birth remains etched in my memory. His gratitude as he held our newborn for the first time brought tears of joy to both of us. For a while, life seemed blissfully calm until my sister-in-law returned, now a mother herself. Her visits quickly became unbearable. She brought nothing for her baby but would leave with supplies like diapers and formula from our home, all while making cutting remarks about my age. She even compared our children, cruelly suggesting that my age somehow reflected on my daughter's appearance. Her audacity was baffling. Eventually, her husband's job took their family to another state, granting us a brief reprieve, but when my daughter started elementary school, she discovered her cousin was also enrolled. Despite the tension between the adults, the two children formed a warm bond. My daughter, older and naturally caring, looked out for her cousin, and he quickly became popular among their peers. By the third grade, they shared a class. When my daughter's summer reading reflection was published in the local newspaper, it became a source of family pride, except for my sister-in-law. She claimed the book my daughter wrote about was meant for her son, ignoring the fact that the children had exchanged books by mutual agreement. The children's willingness to share stood in stark contrast to the adults' conflicts. My nephew had simply preferred the book my daughter initially chose, and she had graciously let him have it. Unfortunately, my sister-in-law wasn't content with this. She accused me of ghostwriting my daughter's reflection, citing my past as a college novelist, a detail she likely learned from my husband. Worse, she spread rumors at school, claiming I had used personal connections to influence the competition judges. These unfounded accusations broke my daughter's spirit. She withdrew from reading, her once favorite activity, and the light in her eyes dimmed. Seeing her so disheartened was my breaking point. I finally confided in my husband, sharing the full extent of his sister's hurtful behavior over the years, from stealing clothes meant for our daughter to mocking my appearance during pregnancy. Outraged, he decided it was time to confront her. Together with his parents, he visited her home unannounced. Her initial delight at the surprise quickly turned to dismay as she faced a stern rebuke. Unable to deflect, she lashed out at me, portraying herself as the victim of a supposed betrayal by her favorite brother. I initially answered her calls, mistaking them for an effort to reconcile, but it quickly became clear she was only venting her frustrations. After weeks of enduring her rants, I set her number to go straight to voicemail, effectively ignoring her. The calls eventually stopped, which I assumed was due to her losing interest, but I would later discover otherwise. In December, my in-laws organized their first children's Christmas party, which raised my curiosity about the timing. My daughter, however, was thrilled by the invitation. She fondly remembered her kindergarten Christmas celebration and hoped for a similar experience, especially since her current school didn't hold holiday events due to a policy on religious neutrality. While preparing for the party, I reflected on the broader significance of Christmas. Though rooted in religious tradition, the holiday has evolved into a universal celebration of joy and generosity. Yet, I've often noticed some parents strictly uphold its religious aspects, which seems unnecessary when the spirit of the season can bring people together in so many ways. For the past 2 years, my daughter and I had celebrated Christmas quietly at home, creating our own traditions. The highlight was always the gift exchange, which she adored. This year, we followed the party's suggested $11 budget and went shopping together at a nearby mall. She carefully chose one of her favorite picture books to share, excited about spreading the joy it had brought her. On the day of the party, she left with the wrapped gift, taking the bus to her grandparents' house. My mother-in-law assured me she would pick her up at the bus stop, and later called to confirm my daughter had arrived safely. Relieved, I returned to my work-from-home tasks. But less than an hour later, the front door opened unexpectedly. My heart sank as I saw my daughter standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She silently handed me a gift bag, her expression heavy with sadness and fear. Inside, I found a shredded copy of her award-winning reading Reflection, a grotesquely mutilated stuffed animal stained with red ink, and a card scrawled in threatening red letters, "Don't get too arrogant, or you'll end up like this." The horrifying sight made it clear this was no prank. Through tears, my daughter revealed that the gift was from my sister-in-law. Shocked and furious, I struggled to process how such malice could occur at what was supposed to be a joyful, child-focused event. Despite our prior agreement that adults wouldn't participate in the gift exchange, my sister-in-law had attended and orchestrated this cruel act. My mother-in-law, who had always promised to inform me if her daughter caused any trouble, seemed unaware of her presence at the party. This betrayal felt deliberate and calculated. Determined to act, I went to the police. Though they initially dismissed it as a family matter, a compassionate female officer understood the severity of the situation and took my concerns seriously. She assured me that threats and intimidation, even within families, were punishable offenses and promised to confront my sister-in-law. That evening, I told my husband everything. Outraged, he called his parents, who were equally shocked and claimed ignorance. They speculated that my sister-in-law had snuck in through an unlocked back door while my mother-in-law was preoccupied with hosting duties. The next day, the officer visited my sister-in-law and issued a stern warning about the legal consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, my in-laws called a family meeting to address the incident. When my sister-in-law and her husband arrived late to the meeting, her defiance was palpable. She dismissed the police warning as proof of her innocence and seemed more annoyed than remorseful. Her husband, however, appeared blindsided by the details of her actions. As the gravity of her behavior sank in, he apologized to us profusely, expressing genuine regret. To everyone's surprise, he then announced his decision to file for divorce. His revelation stunned the room, as their marriage had appeared stable on the surface. He explained that he had endured years of her escalating behavior, from neglecting household responsibilities to creating a toxic environment. Her obsession with appearances and social status had led to unnecessary moves and constant disruptions, often under the guise of seeking better opportunities for their son. Her latest actions, however, were the breaking point. The cruelty she directed toward our family and the harm she inflicted on her own niece convinced him he could no longer stay in the marriage. As he spoke, my sister-in-law remained unapologetic, clinging to her narrative of victimhood. This shocking turn of events brought a sense of closure to the ordeal. While my husband and I focused on healing and supporting our daughter, it was clear that my sister-in-law's actions had irreparably fractured her own family. The decision to divorce wasn't made lightly. It was a culmination of years of frustration for my sister-in-law's husband, now accelerated by her recent harassment. Their son's preference to stay with his father, supported by his father's unwavering commitment, ultimately tipped the scales, despite her initial reluctance. Caught off guard by the divorce announcement, my sister-in-law made a feeble attempt to apologize, framing her actions as mere pranks, but the severity of her behavior, particularly the hostile message aimed at a child, was indefensible. Her actions crossed a line that couldn't be dismissed as a misunderstanding or joke. They revealed a profound lack of judgment and a breach of familial trust. I confronted her, pointing out the disparity between her behavior and what is expected of a responsible parent. Being a parent doesn't automatically grant you parental instincts, I said. Your actions don't reflect care or consideration for anyone but yourself. Despite her tears, my husband stood firm. Crying won't undo what you've done, he said. At your age, You should know better than to expect sympathy to erase the consequences of your actions. Yet, she continued to deflect, denying wrongdoing and suggesting the family's disapproval stemmed from my marriage to her brother, as if the real issue was my age rather than her harmful behavior. Her inability to grasp the gravity of her actions left everyone speechless. The meeting ended abruptly, with her husband escorting her home. The divorce proceedings soon began, though they were marked by her refusal to acknowledge her faults. Ultimately, it was her son's innocent yet candid recounting of the Christmas party that exposed her actions further and expedited the separation. Unintentionally, her son shared the story of the disturbing gift exchange with his classmates, describing the mutilated stuffed animal smeared with red ink. Concern quickly spread among the school community, drawing attention to her behavior. While her son had no malicious intent, his words highlighted the impact of her actions, stirring discomfort among teachers and parents alike. The fallout affected my daughter deeply. She found it difficult to return to school, her spirit dampened by the incident and the whispers surrounding it. Despite my hope to resolve the matter quietly, her cousin's story had already made its way through the community. His recounting was not meant to embarrass her, but rather to shed light on his mother's harmful actions. The unintended consequence was heightened scrutiny of our family. Witnessing the escalating consequences of her behavior, my sister-in-law's husband moved to finalize the divorce quickly, agreeing to her terms simply to secure his and his son's peace. Her son, brave beyond his years, openly rejected her, telling her he didn't need her in his life and expressing his gratitude for his father's care. Her descent into infamy continued. Widely ostracized in the community, she faced hostility from neighbors and struggled to maintain even a semblance of normalcy. When she returned to her parental home seeking solace, she was denied entry, leaving her to fend for herself. Her final act of cruelty was her cold declaration that children were an inconvenience, as she intended to remarry and had no interest in raising her son. Abandoned and isolated, she spiraled further, accumulating debts and making desperate choices. Eventually, she vanished from our lives entirely. My husband and his parents chose not to file a missing persons report, accepting her absence as a resolution to the turmoil she had caused. In the aftermath, our family began to heal. My daughter gradually regained her confidence and returned to school, supported by her cousin, who promised to look out for her. This difficult period unexpectedly strengthened our bonds with my former brother-in-law, as we united to prioritize the well-being of the children. My in-laws, deeply remorseful for their daughter's actions, have embraced both grandchildren with open arms. Their unwavering support has helped us rebuild trust and harmony within the family. With my sister-in-law out of the picture, we've finally found the peace we so desperately needed, a chance to move forward together, free from the shadows of the past.